Okay, so welcome everybody. Hare Krishna. This is our Gita Gyan Essence of Bhagavad Gita course level 1, and this is day 10. So we'd like to dedicate this presentation to the founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. And we will offer some Mangalacharan prayers before we begin. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurumilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Sri Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prastaya Bhutale, Srimati Bhakti Vigna Vinasha, Narasimhaiti Namine, Mukam Karoti Vachalam, Pangum Langaitim Girim, Yatkripa Tamaham Vande, Shri Guru Dinatarinam. Paramananda Madhavam Sri Chaitanya Ishwaram Tat Sat. So, by the blessings of Jagannath Baladev Subhadra, Sri Srinita Sundar Gaura Hari, and also Sri Radha Madhava. So, these were the deities I introduced yesterday in Sri Ram Mayapur. So, here's a close up, a different angle of shot. And we have Gita Mahatmya to begin. Samsara Sagaram Goram Tartum Ichchati Yo Naraha Gita Navam Samasadya Param Yati Sukhe Nasaha. A person who wants to cross over the ghastly ocean of material suffering can do so very easily by taking shelter of the boat of the Bhagavad Gita. So, with that, we begin. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we will start by recapping chapter 9. It was entitled The Most Confidential Knowledge. Remember, Raja Vidyam, Raja Guhyam. So, and it's from 9.1 to 9.3. We heard how this is the king of knowledge, and it is also confidential. So why it is confidential? It's because it's only meant for the anasuya, those who are not envious. That means, in other words, those who are devotees of the Supreme Lord. So, and then in 9.2, the nature of bhakti is also described. How it is susukam kartum abhyayam, it is eternal, it is idam pavitram, purifying and all that. And how faith is very important in this endeavor. In this path, one has to develop, it's basically a development of faith, stage by stage. And in 9.4 to 9.10, Krishna talks about the objective of this knowledge, the goal of this knowledge. And in describing it, he begins by talking about himself as how he is inconceivable. So there are some aspects of knowledge which are just inconceivable. To understand how Krishna is inside everything, but at the same time, he is not within it. So these kind of qualities, paradoxical qualities, Achintya Krishna. So from verses 9.4 to verses 9.10, you can read about how Krishna talks about his inconceivable qualities. And then, though he is inconceivable, though the Lord is inconceivable, but still the devotees can know him. So to know Krishna, and Krishna says the Muddas cannot know. Those who are grossly, those who, here he'll give 9.11 to 9.12, about how the foolish deride me when I come to this material world, Krishna says in these verses. So they cannot understand. So we heard yesterday the story of example like Duryodhana and also Sishupal, King Sishupal, how they cannot understand even when the Lord is standing right in front of their eyes. So then, but the Mahatmas, the great souls, they who have understood, the Bhaktas particularly, they can understand the Supreme Lord. Why? Because when one is envious, the spiritual energy of the Lord will not allow the non-envious to understand him, because that is as per the desire of the living entity. The living entity don't want to know who is God, because they want to enjoy the material creation. That is for those who are having the envy. So they came. Whereas the devotees, the Mahatmas and the Jnanis, they can understand the Supreme Lord's actual position. And we can also understand the actual position if we have faith. Faith in what? Faith in Sadhu, Shastra, and Guru. So three things have to be there. So most important of this is Shastra, which is the word of the Supreme Lord. So having faith in Shastra, we can use Shastra, we can understand Shastra by the assistance of Guru, by the mercy of Guru. And in this way, we can develop the eyes to see God. So this is how in chapter 11, Krishna will give the divine vision for Arjuna and for others to also see. So then we heard about how Prayojan, Krishna is the ultimate goal again, from inconceivable, how to know him, and then ultimately he is the goal of all the jnanis, the goal of all knowledge, the goal of all education, the goal of all yoga, and he is the ultimate controller of everything. So he establishes this very clearly in chapter 9. And then he goes on to speak about how this knowledge is the most confidential and the most secret. The karmis cannot know, they do not know. So because they don't want to know, because they want to continue in their enjoyment. So the Lord facilitates. But those who want to, the moment the bird turns his head and looks at the Paramatma within his heart, then the Lord arranges for him to progress in this path of bhakti. And Krishna says how he preserves the bhaktas, those who do surrender to him, those who are trying to follow in this process of devotional service. How Krishna preserves what they have and carry what they lack. I think it's the other way around. Carry what they lack and preserve what they have. Yeah. And then Krishna says how he is Govindam Adi Purusham. Govinda is the Adi or the original. Purusham means enjoyer. And everything else is basically secondary to him. And after establishing himself clearly in this way, as the goal of devotional service, as the goal of yoga, as the ultimate, what is this Raja Vidyam? The Raja Vidyam is the position of Krishna. That is the king of knowledge. And what is this Raja Guhyam? This is also the king of knowledge. So not everybody knows sometimes. So Krishna will tell in chapter 10, even many of the devatas do not know his actual position. He will reveal that in chapter 10 as we see. But before that, in Bhakti Marga, the path of devotion, Krishna talks about some practical understanding on how to begin this devotional service. You know, you remember he mentions if one offers with love a leaf, a flower, water, right, like that. So in this way, he will accept. So therefore, it begins, the reciprocation begins. And then Krishna also says, whatever you eat, whatever you do, whatever charity you perform, whatever austerity you perform, whatever duties that you do it as an offering for me, for my pleasure. So that is another beginning of the bhakti path. So, and then he culminates very quickly by saying that become my devotee, offer your obeisances to me. And then he think of me always. And in this way, you will surely attain me. That was the last verse of the chapter 9.34, which you will mention. So the key takeaways were, as I mentioned already, I'm repeating the same thing. Raja Vidyam, Raja Guhyam, king of knowledge, most secret of all secrets. Knowing Achintya Krishna, devotee is always protected. And then he speaks about the Bhakti Marga, about offering food, and also about offering whatever activities that we do. And in this way, gradually, as we increase in our devotional service, we are able to come back to Krishna without fail, for sure, he says. And now we move on to chapter 10. Chapter 10 is called the opulence of the absolute. So the opulence of the absolute is also known as Vibhuti Yoga. So what is this Vibhuti? So Vibhuti means extraordinary manifestation. So it's not the same as, it's not avatar. It's because avatar is the Lord directly. But this is, Vibhuti means it's like a part of the power or the part of the majesty of the Lord. So it's extraordinary. That means when we look around us, if we see anything extraordinary, extra wonderful, so we have to understand that that is actually a reflection of the part of the majesty of the Supreme Lord. So we will speak about this. Why Vibhuti Yoga? So in chapter 1, setting the scene, and then chapter 2, Krishna gives the entire Gita in summary. And then in chapter 3, he begins, in chapter 2, he begins by giving the knowledge about the soul and about the difference between matter and soul, Sankhya Yoga, right? Difference between matter and spirit. And then step by step, he lays out the path back to the purpose of human life, the purpose of human existence. So how to come back, how to end this cycle of birth and death once and for all, and to return back to his kingdom. So and then he talks about the two paths. One is the jnana path and one is the bhakti path. And in this way, he goes on, and from chapter 1 to 6, he mainly talks about the jnana path, and then a little bit of information towards the end of each chapter about the bhakti path. But from chapter 7 onwards is the other way around. He speaks more on the bhakti path. In fact, in chapter 7, he reveals himself, his actual position in full. In chapter 4, he gave an inclination. In chapter 2, very small preview. In chapter 4, a little bit more bigger preview. And then in chapter 7, more details about his actual position. And he goes full-fledged in chapter 9 and chapter 10. So you will see how in chapter 9 and chapter 10, he no holds barred. That's why chapter 9 was called the King of Knowledge and the most confidential. And in chapter 10, he talks more about his glories, his opulence, about his actual situation. So Vibhuti Yoga, we will hear about this. Because in chapter 9, Krishna ended the verse 934. After revealing his position, his actual situation as the Supreme Lord of everyone, so then he says, Man mana mad bhakto, man mana bhava mad bhakto. So how to attain me? Therefore, Krishna says, because we already learned in chapter 8, at the time of death, right? It's very important. So how do we attain? So Krishna says here, follow this path of devotional service. And in this devotional service, the main point here is Man mana bhava mat bhakto. So always think of me. Man mana. Mana means mind. So always put your mind on me and become my devotee, mat bhakto. So then one might think, all right, I've got the point, but how do I do this? Can you give me some understanding on how I can do this? So this chapter 10 is very important because it will outline how we can follow the path of bhakti. In chapter 9 also, he began by saying how we should offer everything to him and all that. But in chapter 10, he goes more into the aspects of how to remember the Lord. So he begins with this verse. I'll just read it out. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Bhuya eva mahabahu Shrinu me paramam vachaha Yatte aham priyamanaya Vakshyami hitakam yaya. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, listen again, O mighty armed Arjuna, because you are my dear friend. So not only that Arjuna wasn't envious. In chapter 9, Krishna began by saying, because you are not envious of me. So that is for the person who's neutral. At least he's not envious. So therefore, the path of bhakti is open to that person. But here Krishna is saying, because you are my dear friend. So how do we become a dear friend of the Lord? Remember, one of the 9 processes of bhakti, it's sakyam, friendship. But that comes, what Krishna is trying to say here, because you are my friend. What's a friend? A friend is like a well-wisher who wants to serve, who wants to actually please the person. So therefore, someone who is positive-minded towards the path of bhakti and towards Krishna. So Krishna considers that person to be just like himself, as good as himself. He takes him to his confidence. That means he starts revealing to him more and more secrets about how to come back to him. So the more we surrender to the Lord, the more we develop our faith to the Lord, from non-envious category, we come to the friend category or the well-wisher category. So therefore, in this way, we can advance in our spiritual life. So here, because Arjuna is my dear friend, so this knowledge is very confidential. It's an intimate understanding of the Lord. Just like we don't tell people about our family and about ourselves, about our what we think and everything, right? Unless we are very close to them. So in the same way, the Lord reserves that right. And when one becomes a devotee, a confidential devotee, then more and more is revealed about the glory of the Lord. So chapter 10 is especially for the devotees. So because you are my dear friend, for your benefit, I shall speak to you further, giving knowledge that is better than what I have already explained. So Krishna gave the king of knowledge in chapter 9. And that same king of knowledge is also expanded into chapter 10, 11, and 12, actually. So, and here he's saying more advanced level. So I'm giving you higher understanding of that same king of knowledge, which I gave earlier. And then verse 2, neither the hosts of demigods nor the great sages know my origin or opulences. So Krishna is saying, what I'm about to tell you, not many people know. Only my confidential devotees understand my opulence. And that also, they can only begin to glimpse at it, because my opulence is infinite. So neither the hosts of the demigods nor the great sages can even begin to understand his majesty and his glory and his opulence. Right? For in every respect, I am the source of the demigods and the sages. So here we want to understand something about the position of God. So this is Bhagavan. Now when we say Bhagavan, Bhagavan comes from the word Bhaga and Van. So Bhaga means opulence and Van means one who possesses it. Just like, in Malay we have Dharmavan, Jutawan. So Jutawan means one who has the juta, right? The money, the millions. So in the same way, Bhagavan, one who has Bhaga or opulences. So I'm basing this Bhagavan definition from this, because of course nowadays many people also get called Bhagavan. but the root point of Bhagavan, anybody with great opulences also sometimes are called Bhagavan. But in the root of it, the original ultimate understanding of Bhagavan is from this verse, which comes in the Vishnu Purana 6.5.47. Aishvaryasya samagrasya viryasya yasha shashriya jnana vairagyayuschaiva sanam bhaga itingana. So bhaga, the definition of opulence. Who is considered to be opulent? So for Bhagavan, when it's referring to the Supreme Lord, it is said here, Bhagavan samagrasya. Samagrasya means in full. Opulences in full. So we could say somebody is rich, or somebody like, who's the rich people nowadays, Bezos and what else, Zuckerberg, his money just dropped. And then there are others also, who else? I forgot their names. So anyway, like that, there are rich people, but they cannot claim that they are the possessor of all the wealth. They possess some of the wealth and makes them very rich, but they cannot claim that they are samagrasya, that they possess everything in that category. So Bhagavan is one who possesses in full. Samagrasya possesses what? So there are 6 things here: Aishwarya, Viryasya, Yashasha, Shriya, and Jnana, and one more, Vairagya. So these are the 6 things, right? So some of the words we already know probably. Aishwarya, I'm sure we all know what it means. Aishwarya means opulence, wealth, wealth and richness and all that. So here, Krishna is considered samagrasya for Aishwarya, complete opulence in full, because of the various pastimes he has performed, and also based on scripture. So there is a nice verse in the Brahma Samhita where Lord Brahma, he will say, Chintamani prakarashatma sukalpa vriksha laksha vriteshu shurabhira vipalayantam lakshmi shahasra sata sambrama sevyamanam govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. So Lakshmi sahasra satatam sevya Brahma. So it begins by Chintamani. So he says, Brahma is describing the abode, the spiritual abode of Krishna. So he says this abode of Krishna, Goloka Vrindavan, the abode of Krishna is Chintamani Dham. Chintamani means it is made out, every rock and sand in that place is made out of what is called Chintamani jewel. It's a very special jewel. It's actually a wish-fulfilling jewel. It's the most beautiful jewel, and anybody, anything they want, that jewel has the potency to give that person's wish. So this is called Chintamani. Chintamani prakarashatmasu. So it's full of this everywhere, on the floor, on the stones, all the pebbles are all Chintamani. And then not only that, there is also full of kalpa vriksha. Kalpa vriksha trees. Vriksha means tree, kalpa vriksha means wish-fulfilling trees. So anything one desires, one can request, and this tree will fulfill it. And laksha vriteshu shurabir. It is full of cows, Surabhi cows. And these Surabhi cows are also not ordinary. They are extremely, very, very, how to say, symbol of good luck. In that sense, it's considered like fortune personified. And they also are wish-fulfilling cows. And then Lakshmi Shahasra Sata Sambrama Sevyamanam. So this Lord, he is served in this Goloka Vrindavan Dham by thousands of Lakshmis. Sahasra Sata Lakshmi Sahasra. So thousands and thousands of Lakshmi, because Goloka Vrindavan is full of gopis, gopas and gopis. So the gopis are all actually embodiments of Lakshmi directly, and he is being served by thousands of them. So therefore, what is his opulence? His opulence is what we call samagrasya, complete. Aishwarya. And also he is Bhagavan because of the second quality. He is the reservoir of all power, virya, viryasya. So virya means power and extraordinary strength. So nobody can claim how the Lord, even when the Lord was a child, when he was just born, within 1 year, within just a few months old, he killed the terrible demon Putana. You know, the demon that came to give him poisoned milk. And then in this way, he killed him. And this pastime you see here, Krishna dancing on the Kaliya serpent. This is the great serpent Kaliya. And he was only 7 years old at that time. And here also, 8 years old, Krishna is lifting the Govardhan hill to protect the residents of Raja from the thunderstorm, from the devastating thunderstorm sent by Indra. So these are all different pastimes which are mentioned in the scriptures, especially in Srimad Bhagavatam and many other places. And then we also saw Krishna in his different expansions, extraordinary feats, how he has always saved many times the Devatas. Each time the Devatas will come and they will beg, and then they will beg to Vishnu, and then Vishnu will come and save them in so many ways. So here also a picture of Vamana Dev, how Vamana Dev saved the Devas from Bali Maharaj. And in this way, you know, Bali Maharaj, okay, this story I will mention in a while. So this personality of Godhead, Srimad Bhagavatam says, 1:18-14, the personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, Govinda, is the exclusive Ekanta shelter for all great living beings, Mahattama. So all great living beings exclusively take shelter of the Supreme Lord. And his transcendental attributes cannot even be measured. By who? It cannot even be measured by such masters of mystic powers as Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma. So the word here is Yogeshwara, Ye Bhava, Bhava is Lord Shiva, Padma is Lord Brahma, Mukhyaha. So even they cannot understand or measure the extent of the power of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then the verse continues in 8. This is from Srimad Bhagavatam, the Amala Purana. So 1:18-21, Brahmaji collected the water emanating from the nails of his feet. So this is the avatar. This is Vamana Dev, you know, the dwarf incarnation. So it's the 10 Dashavataras which are famous, right? One of them is Vamana Dev. And Vamana Dev came to take away the kingdom of Bali Maharaj, because Bali Maharaj was from the demon side, and then they were fighting with the Devatas, and they took control of Devatas already. The entire heavenly planets, most of the universe is controlled by Bali Maharaj. But Bali Maharaj did this because he did it at the request of his guru, Sukracharya. Sukracharya is the guru of the demons. And because he was very obedient to his guru, he attained all success. Whereas the Devatas at that time, they were not really so obedient to their guru, Brihaspati. So they were not as powerful as Bali Maharaj. So anyway, Vamana Dev, they begged Lord Vishnu to protect them. And then Lord Vishnu came as Vamana Dev. He took birth as the son of Kashyapa and Aditi. Aditi is the mother of the Devatas, and Kashyapa is the sage, the father. And in this way, he was a very beautiful young boy, a dwarf Brahmana. So a very short, small dwarf Brahmana. And then he came to Bali Maharaj to ask for charity, because Bali Maharaj, one of the ways he got his power so much, because he was performing lots of charities to the Brahmanas. So in this way, Vamana Dev came to request charity from Bali Maharaj. And then Bali Maharaj looked at him, and he was so attracted by his beauty. The Vamana Dev's beauty was described in many verses. And in this way, he said, please ask what you want. I will give you whatever you ask for. And then Bali Maharaj, Vamana Dev said, no, I don't need so many things. I only need enough land for me to take 3 steps. That means if I take 3 steps if I walk 3 steps, that amount of land which is covered by my 3 steps, that is all that I need. So can you grant me this? Then Bali Maharaj said, oh, is that all? I can give you entire planetary systems because I have conquered the entire universe. So please ask for more. And then there was a long conversation of how, it's not, one shouldn't ask for more than necessary and all that. And a lot of philosophical points are there. You can read in the Srimad Bhagavatam. But eventually, Vamanadev stuck to this, give me 3 steps of land. So Bali Maharaj immediately said, okay, please take. And then, but at that time, Sukracharya, the guru, he realized something is funny here. And then using his mystic power, he was able to understand that this is none other than the Supreme Lord Vishnu himself. And he could understand that he has come as usual to protect the Devatas. So then he warned Bali Maharaj, no, if this is the Supreme Lord Vishnu, so do not give him what he wants. He will take everything away from you. Whereas Bali Maharaj, when he heard this, then he thought, well, if it's true that he is the Supreme Lord, then I should just give everything that he wants, right? Why should I be worried about what I want and everything? So he actually disobeyed his guru. And then Sukracharya cursed him at that time. But anyway, but he disobeyed and then he granted Vamana-dev's desire. So Vamana-dev, he expanded himself into he was a Brahmana dwarf, right? Then suddenly he expanded into a huge size, and with one step, he covered the entire lower planetary systems, the Bilva Shurgas, right? And with the other step, he covered the entire upper planetary systems. So the lower planetary systems covered, the second step, upper planetary systems covered. And then he told Bali Maharaj, where shall I put my third step? And then Bali Maharaj understood, okay, this is the Supreme Lord, indeed the Supreme Lord.